Hello everyone, welcome once again to yet another interesting session from CoinGabbar. At CoinGabbar, we keep bringing on experts to increase your knowledge base so that you can understand how people, the leaders in the industry, are thinking and what is driving them in this more complicated and I must say these days a very volatile scenario. Today, we are joined by Parth, who is the founder of OpenVPP. Hi Parth, how are you?
Hey Sudeep, I'm doing really well. Great to be here.
Great to have you here, Parth. So, let us not waste time and let us say hit the first question right. What do you think? I just keep on thinking that earlier on, Bitcoin and other crypto assets used to move inversely to the dollar scenario because it was like a safe haven when you want to escape from the dollar investments when the dollar value of the dollar based investments is going down. But now, after the ETF have come up, it is moving almost in tandem with the dollar itself. There's no change. They are scoring across the same linear path. And that makes it more dollar dependent than leaving it to be just an independent investment option or an independent asset to invest in. What do you suggest about it, or what is your thought about it?
Yeah, traditionally, at least from like a high level macroeconomics perspective, we always thought that metals was first, starting with the dollar. What's the hedge against the dollar? It's the metals. What's the next higher risk asset class? It's the stock market. And what's the next higher risk asset class? Is the crypto market, and they all kind of bleed to each other. And so I think now we're in a little bit of a interesting time where you see energy prices soaring, and so we have values of oil going up, and then at the same time you see kind of all-time highs being put in by both metals and in the stocks. And crypto is kind of in this almost like a holding pattern to see what happens next. Are we going to go into an environment where it's more risk on appetite, or are we going to go into an environment where it's risk off? And so lucky, that's kind of the extent of my macroeconomics evaluation. And kind of where OpenVPP and my work stands is hedging against high energy prices, because we think that's kind of the top of the funnel here. Without energy being actively accessible across the globe, we don't have things like AI and compute, which are some of the highest valued stocks in the stock market. And so it's just a very interesting time, and we're great to be building at such a cutting edge intersection of society.
That's a fair point you've made, because energy is root of all power, root of all evil. Uh, we can say because especially in the times of AI, right, like you rightly pointed out earlier on, the concern for energy was Bitcoin mining, the proof of work that we used to say. Now the concern for energy is the AI tokenization, as to how the tokens are being consumed and how many tokens are being used, and a lot of other things are coming up. AI is like also moving at its own pace. It is moving at its own thought process and everything. Both OpenAI and Claude CEOs have launched their own survival plan. It comes when it comes to AI apocalypse or something. But if there's a kill switch, that is going to be it's going to be energy. So unless the energy grids are controlled by the AI themselves, I think the control still lies in the human hands, and we are still far away from what we call, the Terminator to Judgment Day kind of a scenario. I'm an old school, and I'm a big fan of James Cameron, so that movie like comes on top of my list when it comes to the AI based systems. But getting back to track when we talk about the crypto ecosystem, tokenization has been very effective in actually hedging what the parameters of the financial ecosystem have been. But the recent war has taken a different turn, and we are like inclined to think otherwise because uh, the basis of the crypto ecosystem is decentralization. But the largest entities holding Bitcoin these days is MicroStrategy, the US government, Binance, the Chinese government. Leaving apart the Satoshi wallet. So, do you think the power is again, if the bigger corporates or the bigger investors lost their bus on holding Bitcoin in the first instance, they're trying to do it now, and they're trying to control it now. I mean, is it going to be a centralization again, especially your power?
Well, that's there's been a lot of work here in the U.S. in regulatory frameworks. You recently saw the Clarity Act move past the Senate Banking Committee, which was just a huge step in the right direction. And so, whether that's a centralized entity or a government custodying crypto assets, digital assets, and Bitcoin, what key regulator needs to be involved, the SEC, the CFTC, and essentially clarifying whether the tokens they're holding are securities or commodities. As it relates to decentralization, I think that's what really inherently makes us interested in both energy and crypto, because the scalability factor of both of these economies need to, one, be decentralized to give power in a diversified approach, and two, we wanted to have it exchanged and move at the speed of the internet. And so, while Bitcoin is an incredible store of value, we could call it the digital gold, it's still not necessarily being able to be used in everyday economies at the speed of the internet. And that's what's really good. Earlier last year, where we explored the Genius Act, which was making stablecoins more legal, more safer, and being pegged to the dollar. So I think collectively, we're all advancing from a technology perspective. The regulatory framework is finally catching up as well. And when you align both of these, we have a fundamental which is eventually always going to catch up to the price. And so that's why we're again excited to be building at the intersection of very pivotal industries across society.
Well, that brings me to a very important question. That I mean, when you talk about Open VPP, we talk about the Internet of Energy. That is what your buzzword is. So, how does you say that? Obviously, energy is the driving force in the times to come, because more and more of things are shifting towards the energy requirement, the energy consumption, and that is becoming basically the let's say the center of power. I mean, we can see from the recent war between the Iran, Israel, and US that energy will be the center of the ecosystem. At least till water becomes one. So, if we talk about energy in particular, how is OpenVPP holding on to the concept, and what exactly is the thought process behind building OpenVPP?
Yeah, so I pretty much spent my entire career in the power and electric utility sector. So it starts off on the energy generation side, not oil and gas, but power as an electricity to be consumed by individual and businesses, all the way to the distribution of it through transmission systems and distribution systems, power systems. And so, inherently, the electric grid, sure, it's decentralized by nature. There's things like substations, there's transformers and distribution equipment, all between the way power flows and the way the power quality is managed. But there are still centralized, national, monopolistic electric grid operators, which are highly regulated, that are operating these decentralized energy networks. And now, for the first time, we have what we call prosumers, both on the residential side and the commercial industrial side, that are buying, consuming, and owning two-way power flow devices, things like solar panels, which are connected to smart inverters, which are connected to energy storage, which are connected then to electric vehicles, all behind the meter. And then also you have new incumbents like data centers, which are installing almost like their on-site generation systems. We call these microgrids, which are on-site their entire data centers, which are need to be interconnected into the grid, because essentially they still have needs that come from the decentralized or the centralized grid based on where they are. So we're kind of at this really interesting time where OpenVPP, we are able to scale our live RWA platform. We've built the retail product on the base blockchain, and we're building the institutional product on the ARC blockchain. And so both of these, what the essential, the core element is bringing in consumer or business sided devices and becoming dispatchable assets by grid operators, and doing this in a way that's on chain, which it's auditable, decentralized, highly secure, and enough to be revenue grade and settlement worthy for these decentralized assets to participate in what we call a global virtual power plant. And so, that's what we're building at OpenVPP. We have over $30 million in tokenized RWAs live on the platform today, and we're just getting started.
So when it comes to tokenization, especially or the power plants, if we can say directly, so it is basically a real world asset, which is a power plant in itself, which is being tokenized by you. You were also talking about the transmission, I mean the monopoly over the transmission lines by the larger corporates, because power plants can be micro, can be medium, can be big. So you can have a biogas plant in your backyard, and that can even act as a I mean as a power plant, a medium power plant. You can have a solar panel, a solar farm which can act as a micro power plant. But when it comes to transmission, that is where the energy actual redistribution of the energy from the surplus state to the deficit state happens, and that is owned only by the large corporates. So you touched that point there, and we would like to understand more as to being aside the power plant tokenization, what is about the transmission lines or the transmission ecosystem in this? Because everywhere I have seen, like, India is subsidizing heavily if you are setting up a solar plant. So
Mhm.
people have set up large solar plants, but the transmission costs are so high. I mean, in India, it is like all of it is state owned. Most of it is state owned, I must say. Like 80-85% of it is state owned. So there's no much of a problem there. But in more capital centric economies, it is in the hands of the private players, and they like try to monopolize the same. And you don't have any competition, because there are no two parallel lines, like two parallel cell phone operators, so that you can play a bargain on the price or something. So
Mhm.
that is where the bigger problem comes. And is there any solution to that? I mean, off the book, if we can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it on the nail, Sudeep. So this industry, the energy industry, is processing $10 trillion of transactions between generator to transmission to distribution to end users. And so throughout this entire process, regulated national monopolies have essentially formed from the same entities that own the generation to the transmission to the distribution. But I can't speak for the Indian grid, but the United States grid, where we've built our and operated between myself and my co-founders for the last 45 years combined, is that certain territories within the U.S., we call them states. These states have been mandated different style of participation from different end consumers. And so one above the state level is the federal level. We have a mandate we call the Federal Electric Regulatory Commission, and they have a bill out there called 2222, which says that if you're a power producer over a certain amount of megawatts and you want to be interconnected to the grid, you have to be realized as a virtual power plant node, hence the name of our business, OpenVPP. And so some of the early states that have been participating in what we call deregulated markets, we have in the US, Texas, California starting, here in my local community, Illinois, and places on the East Coast. There's actually competition that's being mandated all the way from retail electric power providers. So, they're connected into the transmission side, all the way to end consumers or prosumers that are then connected into the distribution side, that are essentially compensated for their contribution to the grid. But the biggest problem still resides is that if I'm exporting my energy, you have a biogas plant in your backyard, I have a solar panel on my roof, and I have an electric vehicle, combined potentially capable of 150 to 200 kilowatt hours of capacity. I could export that onto the grid, and obviously consume all of my consumption is taken care of. But if I were to participate that into the grid, our electric grids aren't necessarily built for two-way power flow. So I'm not fully being compensated until the electric grid is upgraded with that distribution infrastructure, whether that be a battery or new transformers, to be able to realize the value of the power in my area that's being exported to the people around that could kind of benefit from what we call nodal marginal operations. And so right now it's very regionalized, and regionalized at the node based on the quality of the distribution and transmission infrastructure that's been built in that area by the natural monopolies. And so, crypto and digital asset technologies is a great medium to financially show all of the value. There still needs to be, even if the regulatory comes in, there still needs to be the straight capital investments on the grid that could be made to support things like bidirectional power. And so that's kind of the next evolution of like what comes next. It's the technology, the regulation, and then the infrastructure upgrades that kind of can make this all kind of sync and harmonious.
So I mean, sounds to me more like the chicken and the hen story. I mean, the hen and the egg story as to what
Yeah.
comes first, whether the regulations will come first, or I mean, I mean, you an expert at that, but to my understanding, it is more at the junction of the transmission lines that you will be able to establish some microchips which can have, I mean, an inverter kind of an ecosystem which can transmit power both ways, and it cannot be done with a, I mean, a state regulation enforcing that. Otherwise, transmission, I mean, the companies would not like to lose their hold on to the power ecosystem, and they would like to like centralize everything on their own. But that's about the Web 2 ecosystem. That's about the power industry, which is dominated by giants. Let us talk about OpenVPP more into detail. What I could understand is that there are like two chains, one grid. That is your motto behind this. So there will be two settlement layers. One is the base layer for the or the consumer layer, and second is the arc, that is the utility layer. So how do these two layers come into picture? And if we talk about how do these two layers interact with each other while we talk about the settlement in a bi-directional manner?
Yeah, I can definitely cover that. So I'll start off on the retail product. So today, our retail product has been built on the base blockchain. It's an Ethereum EVM L2. And so essentially, what our assets are in production today, kind of like almost like a proof of concept to say, are people interested? Is we are starting with electric vehicles. And so we think electric vehicles are really the future of society. We have technologies coming out being manufactured by companies like Tesla Motors, and a good example being the Tesla Cybercab. And so the Tesla Cybercab eventually is going to be able to operate in a fleet at the distribution level to say, hey, could this EV autonomously drive to the edge of the grid where a utility is saying, hey, we don't want to upgrade our grid. Is anyone able to help support capacity in this area? Could 100 kilowatt hour battery or a fleet of 10 of them, 1,000 kilowatt hour in fleet, be able to drive autonomously to the edge of the grid on a really hot day to prevent a wildfire, to export their capacity onto the grid? And so this essentially would be driven by a prosumer or a retail adopter to be able to provide that capacity. So what our platform does on base is it tokenizes via ERC 1155 standard and turns this into almost like a semi-fungible NFT. So they can essentially tokenize their distributed energy resource and start earning rewards on it based, one, in OVPP token for powering the network. And two, we have a product that we're building called US Dollar Electric, but essentially linking back to the ARC product, which is being built with institutions, we announced a licensing partnership with our partner called Grid Rails AI. And essentially, they're interfacing directly with regulated, monopolistic transmission, distribution, grid providers, the ones we talked about, to say, hey, we have all this excess flexible capacity from things like smart thermostats, energy storage, electric vehicles, data centers. If you were to integrate it into your grid capability, would you want to settle with these through potentially a stable coin or a dollar pegged vehicle, which also earns an APY to the end customer? We call it US dollar electric, but in doing it in a regulated and compliant way. And so all of that infrastructure is being built on Arc. So we have the retail product where anyone can join, power the network, tokenize your distributed energy resource, and earn OVPP for powering the network, and then participate your asset in local grid programs. Bring your asset to the local grid program, earn an APY for staying in the program, and then being compensated through US dollar electric stablecoin for your participation. And so these are our two products, our institutional being built on Arc, which is made by Circle USDC, who we've actually earned a grant for to develop our product, our institutional product on Arc. And then Base, who's been one of our biggest backers back from the day when our token had no product associated with it, but building on the fastest, most lightweight blockchain base. So this is kind of how our retail product and our institutional product are being built and how they work together.
So when we talk about the interactive force behind these two ecosystems, these two open ends, how would actually the dynamics of, say, OVPP, or the token, work? So every token, you say that it is supported in more of a stable coinish pattern, but still it has to have its own value derivation. So, we all understand that, say, 80% of the tokens basically are held by investors across any chain. 20% are actually used for utility, 80% is for investors. So, if we talk about in this session, what is in it for investors if they invest in this particular token, and how can they derive value? So, what would be the base, the utility on which the token would derive its value? We'll talk about staking later on. But right now, more of the utility side of things that we would like to understand, especially from the tokenomics point of view and your, say, the technical aspects of the token monetization point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started with this idea, and we put our idea out. Again, I come from the industry. My partner, he is the chief innovation officer at a US regulated electric utility. And then our third partner, who heads the Grid Rails unit, he's taken two energy companies public. So we kind of had this idea of, how do we bring more flexible capacity to our power markets? Well, we see what's happening in the traditional finance industry, right? We've seen the tokenization of equities, of RWAs as stocks, and being available globally. Now you can get Apple stock if you're on an MP in India at your 2 a.m. and then still have that same being able to participate in things like shareholder meetings. We see where the world is going in the finance industry, but we come from energy, and so we came up with this idea of the first open virtual power plant, and we launched on Ethereum mainnet in August of 2025, and just based on this idea and showcasing a little bit about our industry expertise and our connections in with regulators, regulated grid providers, OEMs, vendors, the entire supply chain, took our token to a really big market cap on Ethereum mainnet. But, this was before we had our product out, before we had our real utility behind the OpenVPP product now that you see on world.openvpp.energy. And so in order to make our product a reality, we, building the infrastructure on Ethereum, was just basically going to limit our scalability. And so we decided to move our token infrastructure from Ethereum mainnet to the Base blockchain, and then build our product, which it essentially is a semi-fungible staking token standards on EVM and ERC, both on the base and then our institutional product on ARC. So, it's a little bit about our history of tokenomics. We've had 1 billion tokens out there. We can't mint anymore. Our contract has been renounced. We have an amazing dev team. I mentioned a little bit about my co-founders, but there's also about 10 engineers, and we have some other folks on the marketing side. And so, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. But again, like, this is my formal first stint into crypto, come from energy, but the main thing is building our platform, bringing users to our platform, tokenizing more real world assets as energy devices, and collectively growing a community and doing it the right, most organic way we know how.
So, the next part that we come to, as I discussed earlier, is the staking rewards. So, somebody stakes, the tokens with you. What is going to be the reward scenario in this case? And like you already discussed the value derivation. So, will this reward be affecting the permanent value derivation? Because why I'm asking is because there has to be a tokenomics backing the staking rewards and increment in the value following that. So how would that work? We would like to understand a bit in short about the tokenomics as well, along with this particular feature of your tokenomics.
Yeah. So, our staking program is really exciting. It's new. And basically, it rewards two kind of users. The first one is going to be the person that stakes their distributed energy resource, things like their electric vehicle. And essentially, you stake this and you earn rewards for having your vehicle being a flexible capacity derivating asset within the power market. And so this essentially earns you the highest reward within the network. And then the second version is just a token holder. They're able to essentially stake their tokens, and then we have a percentage. I think the public tokenomics are on the website within the tokenomics section. A percentage of the total circulating supply has been converted to an APY, which then gets translated to the token owners as well. And so what's really cool, which makes this kind of a flywheel, is that a percentage of the tokens of all of the capacity and the flexible capacity provided to the grid operators essentially provide the portion of this APY that then goes back to the token holders and the digital and the tokenized RWA asset owners. And a part of that would essentially go back to how those rewards get paid out, whether from USDE in a stablecoin all the way to OVPP powering the network and being able to buy the token essentially for how much flexible capacity they have within the program. So this kind of flywheel was developed. We partnered with Findas and Christo, one of the top tokenomics token economists within the sector. And it was a lot of hard work that went into this. And, our community is very excited, and, we're excited for the markets to kind of come back but until then, developing the utility and the tokenomics and the community and having more devices on the world is, kind of our most important elements that we need to make this entire flywheel the most polished and the best for everyone in the community.
So we, move to the next part of the discussion, which is obvious that these are the boxes that you've already ticked. But if we talk about what lies ahead in the future, so one part of future is the roadmap that you've already laid down, and you are ticking every boxes by the time that you're spending. But we would like to also understand some different, some juicy things. The mind of an entrepreneur is never at peace. Once he has attained a target, he always switches on to the next best challenge that he can have. I have this experience in my 27 years of career that this is how the world works. Whenever you achieve something, you fix your next target to be achieved. So what is Parth thinking when it comes to achieving the roadmap that is there with OpenVPP? What after that, and how are you going to like make it even better, or a more polished, or a more sophisticated, more efficient, or more remunerative or profitable version of this project itself?
Mm. Well said. I think Sudeep, you and me both, and a lot of our people in the digital asset world, we're all entrepreneurs in our own ways, but you said that right. The mind of an entrepreneur doesn't rest. And what's next for OpenVPP is capitalizing and commercializing our technology. And so this happens through two ways, core ways, and it kind of goes back to our retail product on Base and our institutional product on Arc. But our we want to see more devices come online. Right now, our technology, what's in production, you see, is our ability to tokenize electric vehicles. We have another partnership we have not announced that's going to be able to help us tokenize other behind the meter resources. And so we're excited to announce that partnership here shortly. And it's going to mainly lead to more flexible capacity coming via the retail channel onto openvpp.world. Our second pathway is more towards our existing partnerships. One biggest one is on the data center side. We have a longstanding partnership with Blackstart Infrastructure Partners, which is one of the biggest data center providers in the United States, and bringing their data centers on chain and having their assets, like their microgrid assets, being able to participate in their local grid programs and treating their data centers as power plants that are contributing to the grid, and leveraging digital assets to prove the value to the regulated grid providers in that area and having them get paid out in US dollar electric is, one of the biggest next steps, is closing that loop, proving that with one data center, bringing 10, 20, bringing the world of data centers online through them becoming virtual power plants is a really big part. And then I would say 2B on the second set of our growth is commercializing our product and our IP through the Grid Rails entity, and having our technology being then adopted under the Grid Rails umbrella through our IP licensing partnership to the grid providers, the retail electric providers, the original equipment manufacturers, all within the industry, and having all of their devices being able to be tokenized, come on chain, instantaneously settling, and having the electric grid realize that, hey, these devices are providing real capacity. They need to be paid. We need to bring the internet of energy to the internet of money, and having it all kind of bring more capacity onto the grid so we can go build more data centers. We can go build more Bitcoin mining, go build more EV fleets. And so I think, once these are accomplished, we'll see things like, carbon reduction goals being hit. And so, the mind of an energy entrepreneur kind of keeps going, but I think in the near term, we know what our goals are. And once those are achieved, we can continue to the next step. So we're excited to be doing it with like-minded individuals like you, Sudeep.
It's an endless cycle. First you go on increasing the energy production. I mean, we were on the conventional sources earlier, then we went on the non-conventional sources, reducing the carbon footprint, and then the new bird in the block comes by the name of AI, and then we all require massive amounts of energy, and nobody's talking about carbon credit, I mean the carbon emissions as on date, because everybody's going gaga over the the capacity and the things that AI unfold. But in the times to come, maybe when we get more of its footprint on the carbon ecosystem, and maybe melting of a few more glaciers, then we'll understand that it is again time to circle the loop back and maybe reduce the carbon emissions again. So that is how the world works. We wake up when it's a warning signal. Before that, we don't. But that's, I mean, I must say, Parth, it was a very good discussion, not just on the technical side of the energy ecosystem, but also on the crypto side. So you seem to have balanced both the things. while it comes to merging the Web 2 and the Web 3 ecosystem. And as I rightly pointed out in like a number of sessions earlier, that RWA is going to take the world forward when it comes to bridging the gap between Web 2 and Web 3 ecosystems. The other things, the sheer tokenomics, the meme tokens, those are just going to fade away after a point in time. It is only RWAs, it is only the real world asset backed investments or projects which are going to show the world that blockchain actually has some substance. And then with this, we come to the end of this session. Anything on a closing note that Parth you would like to state here, or want to make an appeal to the users or to investors?
No, I mean, really excited to being able to be on your platform at CoinGabbar. I think it's an amazing time to be building at both the intersection of crypto, digital assets, and energy. And yeah, just really delighted for the opportunity and the stage. So wanted to thank you, Sudeep, for creating such a wonderful platform and ecosystem sharing vehicle, for helping echoing our message and what we're building. So thank you guys so much for featuring OpenVPP, and we're really excited for what comes next.
Maybe after some time, maybe in a couple of months, when you have achieved your next block in the roadmap, we'll be discussing something more, some new innovations, some more of challenges, and some new changes that you would like to bring to the world. Well, as for now, this is Sudeep from CoinGabbar signing off, and we'll keep bringing you more interesting updates in the crypto ecosystem. Till then, thank you so much for joining us. Bye bye.